I'd like to introduce the Federal Minister for Education, Professional Training, National Heritage and Culture, Dr. Shahbaz Mahmood, to the stage. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My friend Asfar, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking Asfar for the kind invitation and the opportunity to share with this distinguished gathering some of my thoughts on the challenges that we face and the way forward that we have to adopt and that we as a government are adopting. What I'm going to leave out from this is a discussion of the economic challenge, because Dr. Hafiz Sheikh has brilliantly mapped out the challenges that we face in the field of economy, and has also laid out the number of steps that we are taking to improve the situation and enhance prosperity in the country. So let me move to some other areas and challenges that we face as a country and what we have to do to address those challenges. We have a growing population of 220 million people, and this population growth, despite best efforts, has not slowed down over the years. So our fundamental choice is to have this population as an asset rather than as a liability. We have a literacy rate which is about 67%, and we are not sure about this statistic either. We have 20 million children who are out of school. And the pandemic, when it came, has created further problems as far as the education of children is concerned. The system of governance is in some stress, if not in a crisis. The rate of the state is constantly being challenged by extremists and others. And there is a challenge of delivery of services, there is a challenge of maintaining order, there is a challenge of, obviously, the bigger challenge of improving quality of life. The system of justice that we have is ponderous, takes a very long time, essentially is unable to enforce a contract, is not able easily to punish a criminal, and that contributes to the overall sense of insecurity. The whole notion of rule of law is also under stress, because for those who have the means can sometimes, in fact not sometimes, very often escape the law. So any state which has one set of laws for the rich and one set of laws for the poor obviously has a major challenge. There is an element of intolerance that we have to fight against. And this intolerance is in many fields. It's not just in one area, but we have to learn to basically tolerate differences. But that's also a problem. There's something which is maybe a little controversial, but we are striving, and rightly so, to build a better democracy. But at the same time, the degree of challenges that we face, in some ways, our state ability has gone down, the ability of the state to get things done. So that has gone down. I will elaborate on this a little bit, not too much, but that's one of the issues. So, an economic challenge, of course, Dr. Hafiz Sheikh has very clearly defined. So, when we have these, and I can go on and on describing the challenges, because the challenges are in so many other fields also, but I'm just picking up some of the major ones that we confront, and that we confront as a government also. So one of the first, so it was a question of a choice. Where do I begin? Which is, how do I put in order the challenges that we face as a nation? And I would say that from a governance perspective, the most important element of reform that we have begun to initiate is in the system of justice and rule of law. Because unless and until our justice system begins to enforce the law, when it begins to ensure that contract, a lot of people are business people here. If we sign contracts and that contract cannot be enforced, then obviously business also gets affected. I'm sure you are aware of the fact that many businesses that come and invest in Pakistan have arbitration and other things outside the country rather than inside the country. So a fundamental challenge of governance is fixing the system of justice. And this by no means is a reflection on the honorable people who are part of the justice system. That's not a reflection on them. I'm talking about the system. So therefore, one of the things that we have begun to do is to prepare a set of laws and set of changes in procedures to ensure that the system of justice starts to get a bit more responsive. Not just a bit more responsive, very responsive. And in the coming weeks and months, you will be seeing a series of reforms which relate to the judicial system. And I think that would help not only the business community as far as contract enforcement is concerned, but also overall the whole notion of rule of law will start to feel better. Obviously, the system of justice is not just the judiciary. The system of justice or the law enforcement is very much part of the judicial system. So reforms will be coming in how police works, how our jails work. So all of this together that constitutes the system of justice has to be fixed, and we have to move forward on that. The second very big challenge, and I think Dr. Hafiz Sheikh alluded to that, was fixing the system of governance. Now, over the years, our governing system has expanded, but this expansion has not resulted in better governance, that has not resulted in a quick resolution of the problems that people face. There are 4 components that we are focusing on right now, because we realize that the system of governance is the massive challenge that we face. Incidentally, before we came into government, I always used to maintain that it's not just a few good decisions that you have to make. There are hundreds and thousands of good decisions that you have to make, which will make a difference. So the system of governance has 4 components. So first, how are we organized? Are we organized properly? Is this organization reflective of the challenges that we face? The second is the structure of individual government entities. Are the individual government entities properly organized to respond to the challenges that they face? The third is the civil service. How do you reform service? How do you make the civil services more responsive? It's not an easy task, because I am now heading something called the Cabinet Committee on Institutional Reform. So we are actively engaged in addressing these issues. And if you look at the salary, for example, among the many other challenges, if you look at the salary structure of the senior government servants, and you look at the salary structure of their counterparts in the private sector, there is no comparison. A civil servant at the highest level, after 30 odd years of service, may be earning something like 3 lakhs. Whereas, I don't know that much about the private sector, but I would imagine that the salaries are many, many times of what a senior civil servant is earning. So we have to make sure that we first attract the right talent into service, and then pay them in a way that people are attracted to. But then civil service reform is a very important part. And the last one, which concerns everybody, with the way we function in the government and the way the people interact with the government, is improving the business processes. What kind of procedures, what kind of things. So this is a whole, it's a challenge of many dimensions that we face, but unless and until we make government more responsive, unless and until we make government more able to deliver services, to maintain order, to respond to the citizens, we'll not be able to move, and we are moving in this direction. We have, in my opinion, made some fundamental changes in the way we are organized, but we haven't gone to the extent that we should have. I believe that the 18th Amendment had and has some very, very important areas that have been devolved to the provinces. But I think there are areas which probably should not have been devolved. Let me give you an example. Recently, we were facing a situation of higher prices for atta, for wheat flour. And it was by the structural arrangement is such that it was impossible or very difficult for the federal government to actually coordinate the response of the entire country to this one challenge that we were facing. Because the storage in one province was different, their releases were different, and so on. So, I mean, food security, for example, should be something that we should be able to do together, and in which the federal government should be taking a lead, but it was not. There are other areas. My own area, curriculum reform, is again something the nation cannot afford 4 or 5 or 6 curriculums, because that way we will be dispersed in so many different directions as we are. But one thing that has not happened, which is an essential part of improving the way we govern ourselves, is the local government. Because there is a need to build a very strong local government system. And we are in the process of, the law is almost ready, being given final touches. And very soon, depending on the COVID situation, we will be moving forward as far as local government system is concerned. But it is a very important part of how we govern ourselves. Now I come to my own area, which is education. There are a number of challenges that we face in the field of education. As I said, literacy rate is a problem. Out-of-school children is a problem. But there are other problems also. We have what I call educational apartheid, in which we have different systems of education for different segments of society. We have an elite-based education system which caters to many of us. And then we have a government school system where which has unfortunately been neglected over the last 70 odd years. And then we have a religious school system, the madrasas, all having their own curriculums, all having their own certifications, all having their own, the way they are taught. And education gives you a way of understanding and looking at the world. So if you are being taught different things, then that means that there is no such thing as a collective psyche of the nation. It's a divided psyche. So we are trying to address this. And we are trying to address this through something we call the single national curriculum. We are working very closely with the provinces to make sure that all students in Pakistan have the same benchmarks, same learning outcomes for everybody. Whether you're studying in a madrasa, whether you're studying in a government school, whether you're studying in a private school, you should have the same learning outcomes. We're also trying to address the question of language. Because what has happened over the years is, and we are very much products of that English has become a class. It's not just a system of education, it's a class. So we have to make sure that everybody has an opportunity which is as equal as possible. Not easy at all. If you have to, it's a transformational thing. It will take a very long time. But the journey has to be started. So the start of the journey is that our single national curriculum will be enforced, inshallah, depending on some of the challenges that we are facing because of the pandemic, by April in government schools and maybe by August in private schools. So this is going to be a major change after 70 years that we will have a single curriculum, single benchmark, single learning outcomes for all students in Pakistan. We are also launching thank you. We are also launching special programs on out-of-school children. We are expanding the program called Wasila-e-Taleem, where especially girl children who go to school, their parents would be, as part of the cash transfers, that will be increased, the amount is being increased and the number is being increased, so we make sure that maximum number of children go to school. I'm working a lot these days on technology. We are trying to look at new technologies of how to reach children, to reach girls who don't go to school after a certain period of time, to reach out to teachers so that we can have new methodologies of teacher training. So technology is and of course during the pandemic, we have had to quickly respond, and we have a tele-school going. In another week, we will have, inshallah, a radio school going for those people who don't have access to television. So we have already developed a curriculum with the help of our partners for class 1 to 5 for a radio beaming of lessons, which will start, inshallah, within 2 weeks. We have to have major measures in the field of health. Do you know that 40% of our children are stunted by the time they reach the age of 5 because of malnutrition, because of other things? That's a huge number. Malnutrition, the stunting is of not just physical stunting, but also it sort of atrophies the brain a little bit. So, among many other measures that we are taking, we are going to expand the Sehat Sahulat card. Now look at, I'm just going to take 1 minute to, a family or a person will get 7,40,000 of free hospital treatment by the presentation of the card, not just in government hospitals, but any hospital, any private hospital, through this card. And we have decided that in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, already the decision has been made that the entire population will be covered by the Sehat Sahulat card. In Punjab, it is starting again. we are going to start with half the population and then expand it to the rest. It started with low income, but now we feel that the Sehat Sahulat card can be given to everybody. I mean, I would be happy to have a Sehat Sahulat card because if for 7,40,000 free treatment in any hospital of my choice, that's a huge. So major effort is being made in the field of health to bring it to at least some degree of uniformity, equal opportunity, some degree of that. The other challenge for which we have is we have to develop a caring society. We have to make sure that we reach out to those who don't have enough. So if you notice that during the pandemic, there was a major cash transfer of 150 billion rupees were distributed among the lowest income people. Each family got 12,000 rupees of cash grant, which had never happened before. So we are going to expand the cash transfers because global research has said that for the poorest of the poor, the only way to make their condition better is cash transfers. So when you combine cash transfers with Sehat Sahulat card, with Wasila-e-Taaleem, all these different programs, that means that we are reaching out to the poorest of the poor in this country. So, but we have to expand that. We are rapidly expanding something called the Panagas. What are Panagas? All those people who come for employment, let's say to Karachi, and they're looking for employment and they have no place to stay. We don't want anybody to sleep on the roads. So we are establishing these kind of, I don't know what the appropriate word is, homes, places, shelter homes, where people can go, they can sleep the night, they can get food free of cost. So the poorest of the poor. So a network of Panagas is being established around the country. Another network, which was existing because Pakistan, by the way, as you all know, is a country where there is a lot of charitable giving. In fact, one of the few countries where the charitable giving is to such a high standard. So it was happening before, but we now are opening langar khanas all over the country where anybody who is hungry can go and get food to eat and get warm food to eat. So that is another thing. So we have to, in other words, establish a caring society. That is also a part of challenge we have. And we have to establish a more tolerant society. We cannot afford bigotry. We cannot afford any kind of violence on the basis of differences with somebody else. And that is towards that we are moving forward. In fact, it's a reflection on our system of governance that groups can come and seize public spaces and put into jeopardy the economy, the working of a large majority of the people in that city or that place. It's a sad thing that such groups can do this. Sometimes we hear that lawyers have taken over the courts. I mean, I am a great supporter of lawyers, but taking over the courts. So this kind of challenge to governance has to be tackled. And similarly, anybody who refuses to accept differences, we have to make sure that as a diverse society like Pakistan, with different languages, different ethnicities, different religions, different sects, each have to be tolerant of those differences. And lastly, completely on the other side, we have to prepare ourselves for the challenges, the technological challenge that lies ahead. Things are changing very fast. Artificial intelligence may replace a lot of things. It may replace a lot of jobs. So we have to plan for that. One, we have to train people who can become part of this new technological revolution. And in this context, let me tell you that just before the COVID pandemic hit, our ministry had placed 50,000 students in selected institutions across the country with fully paid scholarship for high-end trades, big data, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, blockchain. There's a lot of these things I don't personally understand very well, but they're all these things that become part of the new technological future. So we are training our people to respond to the new challenges that are going to come in our economy. So, but we also have to prepare ourselves. I mean, in the field of education, let me tell you that a huge opportunity is opened up because we are able to beam one model lecture or lesson to hundreds of schools at the same time. Just by a projector in a school, you are able to beam the best possible way of teaching, let's say, class 1. Yes, it's not interactive, but then the teacher is there to carry on. So technology is going to be playing a huge part in education, in health. Telemedicine, for example, is growing. So we have to be ready and we have to prepare ourselves. And we are ready and we are preparing ourselves. I want to assure you, there is something that Dr. Hafiz Sheikh said, which is very important. We may not be perfect. There may be many areas where sometimes you start and then you have to take 2 steps forward and a step back, where you experiment with something, where you feel that we have to do something and then realize that the challenge is of a different nature, so therefore you have to readjust your sails. But we have one commitment, and that commitment is to the people of Pakistan. There is no, in this government, and under the leadership of Prime Minister Imran Khan, I can assure you one thing, that everything that is being done is not for any personal gratification. There are no businesses that we are running. Our only business is that we want to serve. And with your support, inshallah, we'll be able to deliver. Thank you very much.